No. Yep. And Nimish used to be. Hi, guys. Nimish used to be here just a moment ago. Oh, here are you. How are you, Nimish? Hi.
Yeah, man, how are you? Sorry, but I just swipe my gesture, just pressed back.
Yeah. I figured it should be
Nimish,
some
hi.
kind of an
Yeah, man,
accident.
how are you? Sorry, but I just swipe my gesture, just pressed back.
Yeah. I figured it should be
Nimish,
some
hi.
kind of an
Yeah, man,
accident.
how are you? Sorry, but I just pressed back.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, folks. We have some kind of technical issues here. Yeah, give me 1 second. We obviously have some kind of technical difficulties. That's just Murphy's Law kicking in. We've been talking with Nimish for about 10 minutes now, and the moment we go live, something goes very bad. So Nimish will reconnect in a moment, and we will get to the business. Looks like audio is out of sync. Yeah, we are having some kind of technical difficulties, and I will take care of that. Just give me a second. All this live streaming thing is a very difficult stuff.
Sorry, man. I don't know what's
Hey,
happening.
Nimish.
Just, hi. So it was just echoing. I just kind of curious to know what happened. Is it good now?
Yeah, now it sounds great. Hopefully, it will remain as it
Yeah.
is.
I will ensure it. Like no problem from my side.
Yeah, maybe if you have headphones, maybe if you put headphones, we will be able to prevent this kind of stuff. Maybe it's a feedback.
Hello. How is my
Yep.
voice now?
Oh, now I actually hear you much better. Okay. So,
Thanks.
all of you out there, sorry for a bit of technical issues. And hi, Nimish. How are you?
Yo, I'm good, man. How are you, Vasily?
I'm fine. It's Friday, end of the week, and we have some time to chat about Flutter. And I think I will let you present yourself first. Please explain who are you, where are you from, what you do professionally, and how the hell did you end up in mobile development? Why did you do it yourself?
Okay, so I completed my schooling in 2012, and after 2012, I joined engineering where I took CS course. And during my third year, like I already had interest in like Android programming, not exactly Android, but I was pretty much impressed from the apps, like how do they work and how much problem can they solve of us. So like after in my final year presentation or the project, I made a app in mobile. Basically
Mm-hmm.
it was a prototype of like how these big e-commerce companies work. I just made a small prototype, and after that I was like jump into an Android programming. I made a bunch of apps to like present myself and to gain more interest.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point of time, one of my friends was working in a startup, and at that startup, so that startup was a logistics based startup. Okay, so they had at that time they had their tech outsourced to a service based company,
Okay.
and they were planning to import their tech to like in house. So he saw my work and he connected me to the engineering manager. He saw my work and
Mm-hmm.
like he was impressed. Like this is how my journey started with Android.
Great. So, unlike many other people, like myself and many other people whom I talk to, you actually was kind of very focused on mobile development. You knew right away that you're going to be a mobile developer. You invested, and you didn't get there by accident.
Yes.
So that's great. And for how long have you been a mobile developer since?
So starting from 2015, I have already completed like 5 years in mobile development.
5 years old. Great. So you're a very experienced mobile developer. And now I will just share with the listeners and watchers why we have this conversation, if I might.
Okay,
So I
please.
will share my screen. And some time ago, I wrote this tweet. So, dear Android developers, who isn't scared of Flutter yet? How's your migration to Kotlin going, by the way? And that's, of course, my standard friendly jab at
Mhm.
Kotlin. And then you jumped in and you wrote, I have been working on Flutter since February 2019. And since then, I have pushed 16 Flutter apps, 8 Android and 8 iOS live to respective stores. Now, many times advocate to build apps on Flutter instead of native Android and React Native platforms. Okay, instead of React Native, we can understand that, but you
Mm,
also recommend instead of native Android. So that's the first point that we're going to discuss.
mm,
And then I wrote, holy crap, that's a lot of apps. And that's indeed a lot of apps. It's like 16 production apps in, let's say, a year and a half, right? That's a lot
mm.
of apps.
Yes.
And then you kind of spiked my curiosity by writing the following. I work in a service-based company, and adopting Flutter early gave us the benefit of getting more projects at a relatively lesser cost than making two native apps. For example, a normal project takes Android 400 hours, iOS 400 hours, total native cost 800, and Flutter takes 600. A win-win for both. So I'm like, I don't know if you follow me or you just jumped into this thread by accident, but I'm kind of a freak of numbers and
Mm,
estimation and project planning. That's like one of my favorite topics, maybe except for unit testing and dependency injection.
mm.
So when I saw that, I shoot you a private message, and fast forward a week, we are talking, we're having this discussion. And that's really what I want to discuss with you. First of all, your claim that, first of all, the fact that you advocate building Flutter instead of native Android, and then your claims that you can get more projects by adopting Flutter, and these specific numbers, twice 200, twice 400, or once 600.
Yeah.
So that's for those of you who kind of don't follow me on Twitter. That's the prelude to this discussion. And in this discussion, and by the way, when I announced this discussion, you doubled down on your claims. You said, yes, I'm going to tell you how, I don't remember what was that, but basically you kind of dug yourself a deeper grave by saying that, yes, I'm going to convince you that you are so much more productive with Flutter. And I
Yes.
told you I'm going to grill you about that, and hopefully you can deliver. And that's what's going to happen. Okay, so said all that, let's really start the serious discussion. You adopted Flutter. First of all, the company that you're working on adopted Flutter at February 2019, or you
Mm.
joined that company at February 2019, by which point they have already working with Flutter.
So I joined Grappus in like December 2018. And what happens, how did we start this Flutter is like on every Tuesday, like we have a Tuesday tech session. So like if anyone from the company, whatever they want to present to anyone, he can just gather, declare that he's going to deliver something, and we all listen to him. It's like a Tuesday session.
Mm-hmm.
And in that Tuesday session, someone from our team, it was a front end guy who introduced Flutter to us. So like at that time he introduced, we were not like something like we will build our apps with Flutter at that time or what, but he just planted curiosity in me. So I just started exploring Flutter. At that
When was
time,
that? When was that approximately? The date?
in in January 2019.
January 2019. Okay, great.
Yeah. So he just planted curiosity in me, and I was also exploring. It was backed by Google. We were working in the Google ecosystem. We all are occupied by the Google ecosystem. So I was just exploring Flutter, like how do these work. I explored a little bit of Dart. Its syntax was similar to Java, in which we were working earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we are a service-based company, right? So like we work on many tech stack at the same time. So we were already working with React Native at that time. So like building, I just let's take a step back and like we build these apps, we build this technologies, back end, front end, and like many tools. So what do we originally do? We are trying to solve a problem through technology, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when a person comes to us, he only has the idea, and he has the idea like how he want to build this product, and he has only this idea that after his product is built, what will he do? He
Yes.
doesn't have much knowledge about like I want to build this in Android, I want to build this in iOS, I want to build this in React, or a static page will suit for this. So like we offer him all these, like we can do this, we can do this. So but the basic thing is we have to solve a problem using technology. And at the time, like I just said, we were already working with React Native and hybrid. In hybrid apps we were working with React Native, and we were
Yeah.
not much happy with React.
Okay, can
Like
you please elaborate why? Because I guess many people who consider Flutter as a technology come from React Native, or at the very least, they think like, okay, I have Flutter, but I also have React Native, and React Native has been around for much longer than Flutter. So, could you please maybe elaborate what kind of problems you had?
yeah, so we were already developing one project in React. It was a school. It was a ed tech startup basically. So the developer experience was also not that great of React. Plus, when the app grew to like started growing to like mid size or what, so it started feeling a bit heavy. So we cross checked the app like what extensively are we doing and what other things are we doing. Plus, we were also lacking the resources for React. Like we started hiring for React, but people also didn't were not ready to switch like actively to React.
Mm-hmm.
So that our project was ongoing at that time, so we were already like keeping these problems in mind. Plus, then another project came to us. So this project was not for like normal people; it was like for a company, for internal employees of his company. Okay.
Okay.
So they came to us like, I want to solve this problem of mine, and how can you solve this? And he was like not happy going to React, and we were also like exploring other options at the time. So at the time, we proposed him Flutter. So it was a big company. They already had their measures and all their tech stack already in their place. We after we like introduced Flutter to them, they kind of explored themselves and they gave a go for Flutter.
Okay, so basically,
So
unlike what you said previously, that the rest of your clients, they're not tech oriented, they just want to solve business problems and they don't really care how you solve their problems. This
yes.
specific client, they say like, we don't want React Native, whatever we read about React Native online, so
Mhm.
please provide us with other alternative. And someone at your company injected Flutter, or maybe you yourself injected Flutter, and they agreed. So that was your first Flutter project.
Yeah. So we were also like kind of skeptical, like how we will going to build a production app as Flutter. It's a new framework. How are we going to manage many things? But for this, we took another approach other than from a regular approach. Like whatever we do, we are like design first in that. So whenever any development of any app starts, we have a designs in place so that developer does not waste much time in like deciding design, like how will this go, how will this
Hmm.
go, and everyone has a like pretty much idea like how the end product will be.
Yeah.
So like starting up with Flutter, we took another approach. Like instead of animations, like animation in splash screen or main screen, we took like step by step. We like did a basic splash screen, and like after entering the home screen, we did not focus much on animations on that part, but just to get our business logic and a normal UI components in place. Like the app should work fine, it should not crash. The navigation like from going one page to another should be smooth. So like we approach it step by step, not like our any regular project when we
Yeah.
already have these systems in place.
So you basically kind of lowered your expectations because you adopted this new framework. You said like, we will start something that is working. We're not going to implement something really heavy, and we want to
Yeah.
see how it works out, because maybe at some point we will just decide to drop it and fall back to React or fall back to native development. We don't know this framework yet.
So we were not like ready to fall back, but yeah, we had this case in a back of mind. Like anything goes wrong, we have the back of our team and we can like pull this off.
Okay, and how long did this project take?
This project took around 3 to 4 months.
3 to 4 months. Okay, so let's
Yeah.
jump to numbers that you kind of shared with us in
Mm,
tweets. So your claim was that Android takes 400 hours and iOS takes 400 hours. But before we discuss the actual time it takes to develop an application, which is absolutely amazing and very interesting topic that many
mm,
developers don't even think about, because and I don't intend to diminish like developers who work at product companies, but I myself worked at several product companies, and at product companies you don't think about this almost at all. I participated in agile planning poker, where you kind of should kind of estimate how long things will take, and it's a shit show. It's basically a power game where the chief architect comes in and tells you how much time you have exactly, and you basically cannot say anything against. So 400 hours. But I would first, well, before that, even before 400
mm,
hours, how
mm.
do you estimate how long a project will take? Because I would guess projects take different time. And also how you count the hours. When you say 400, like for example, is it like daily? For example, you allocate developer days to projects, developer weeks to projects, or you actually have a timer during the day, and each time you stand up to grab your next coffee, you put this timer on hold.
No,
So
so it's
how it works?
definitely not. It's definitely not like this. We at Grappus have a very friendly environment to work and all. So like these are like pausing times and all. These doesn't work like this. So let's take a simple scenario like what happens when a project comes to us and the time we deliver it. So a person comes to us with a particular problem like I want to build solve this problem and I want to build product like this.
Hmm.
So when a person comes to us, he doesn't have the exact implementation in his mind like how does he want his product to look like, right?
Yeah.
So he gives a firstly in the first meeting he gives a very vague idea about his like how does he want to do it, how does he want to proceed with it, where does he want his product to look like after 5 years, what are his target audiences. So basically the first thing which happens is the brainstorming part. We like brainstorm with the client to get the most out of him like how does he want his product to look like, what are his target
Okay.
audiences, and like these things, these are the first step of the brainstorming process. And after the brainstorming is over, brainstorming also it can like depend from person to person, project to
Hmm.
project, like how does the product is. So after this brainstorming part is over, we like make a meeting notes and all, we like decide everything from the client, we verify these things like you want this thing, you want this thing. And after the brainstorming we go into the design part.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have a like a very strong team of designers. And
Designers, you mean UI, user interface designers
yeah,
at
UI
this
design.
point? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we are very experienced and very like nice team of designers, and which is like one of our USPs of Grappus. So after the brainstorming part, the design comes up where we like no, note out the project onto like UI design. We use tools such as Sketch or Figma where we prepare like design mockups and how will the end product look like. We like share it with
Okay.
the client step by step. Like this is the onboarding process. This is how your home screen will look like. This is how
Hmm.
your navigation drawer will look like. And
But
after all
but
this,
but wait a second. All these activities,
mm,
brainstorming and design, are
mm,
they part of the 400 hours that you specified, or we are talking about something which is not
no,
accounted? Not.
no,
Okay.
it's accounted, but it's like for the final product, these estimates are not accounted. So like even starting at this point of time, after the brainstorming process, the client kind of like he's like curious like how much will it cost, how much will it cost. We give him estimate based on his working hours. So
Yeah, so
after the
you basically estimate. I think I know this system. You basically sit
mm,
down, you estimate how, after you have mockups, design mockups, you estimate how long it will take, and then you
mm,
tell the client it can take, sorry, 400 hours, but just so you know, it can go up by 40% by the end of the project or something like that.
Yeah, so like based on the type of the project and all, we like also keep a like range, like this is like 400 to 450 hours, or like some 350 hours to 400 hours. So like we basically give a range to the client.
Yeah,
And like
great.
for all these things, like every single thing is accounted for, thing like the splash screen animations, or like the walkthrough animations if you want some specific case, or like the feature estimation.
Great.
So
And
like
how
this
do
is how
you
this whole
then,
thing works.
let's say you gave the client the estimate and client says, okay, go forward, guys. That seems reasonable to me. And then you start working. How do you actually track the time that you spent working on the project?
So what happens is, after like the designs are finalized, the client is also happy, like this is how my app and my design will look like. We basically divide the app into like a deliverables of 2 weeks. So we promise to the client that we'll send you the bill like every 2 weeks, and
Mm-hmm.
we divide our work. Like in the first 2 weeks, we'll do this splash screen, we'll do this login part on the user onboarding part, and like after 2 weeks we'll do the home screen, we'll build the backend, this API, we'll all do all the things here. So like we
Okay, it
send a
makes
shared
sense.
bill. Hmm.
Yeah, it makes sense. You basically do some kind of gradual development, incremental improvement, and deliver functionality incrementally, which is actually, I think, very nice approach because the client gets to see, the client can inject their feedback. That's great. But still, you didn't answer my question. How do you
Hmm.
know, for example, over the span of 2 weeks, over the span of one sprint, how do you know how much time you personally spent working on a single application?
So like taking 8 hours per day of a developer, like let's take me for example. Let's take
Mhm.
my 8 hour working day, and like for a week I work 5 days, so like I have 40 hours a week. And
Great.
let's
So you
say,
basically allocate days, developer days, right? Okay,
so
great, great. That's
let's
that's
take
what
this.
most people do.
So let's take this splash screen example. So like this is a splash screen, static screen animation will come up. We like estimate this. So like this animation should not take more than 4 hours. Okay, this onboarding login page functionality, two API calls integration, and this all should take like 8 hours. So basically, this is how this is works in like a small part which I tell you.
Okay, and then we arrive at this number that you shared, 400 hours. Is this like some kind of a typical number for for the complexity and the size of the project that you usually work on, or it's an average over some, I don't know, 16 apps that you mentioned? Where does 400 come from?
So
Or is
like
it just an
the
example?
the number which I mentioned you on the tweet, it was like just an average number of like for a small or like small to medium sized app.
Okay, so that's what it takes to develop small or medium-sized app when you do it natively. Android 400 hours and iOS 400 hours.
Yeah, so
And then
it
and then
basically it's just to give you idea like how like this hourly scoring works. So like when any project comes to us, we like also estimate the hours it takes every feature. Every we like estimate every feature, like this is the feature, it will take around 8 hours. This feature will take around 50 hours. This like 70 hours. In backend, we like have to fetch data from external sources. So like this may take time. So also we
mhm,
also take a kind of like extra time. That's why we give a range.
great. Okay, now okay, let's say you know that average Android projects takes 400 hours. How do you
Hmm.
know that Flutter, first of all, do you have metrics? Do you keep metrics that actually show that Flutter takes 600 hours, basically 50% more than native Android project?
So it's not like 50% more than the native Android project. It's basically to reduce the time working on like two different apps. So like if any project comes, there will be in the native part minimum two developers are required, one for the Android one and
Hmm.
one for the iOS one. So like working with different people, like let's suppose I was working in a project at the time and we had a like image carousel to make. So that image carousel had like some nice animation, like when the picture comes from like left to right, it was like increasing its height when it comes to center and all. So at that at that time I found the library to accomplish that. and like in iOS they had to make that function natively, so like it took more time, plus it increased the dependency of involving more people into the project. If we do the same thing in Flutter, we kind of like we require like less people to do the same work on the same code base. App would run like on two platform, plus the bugs which will come, it will be like solved in lesser time instead of solving a bugs in like two platform or adding a feature in two platform. It will
Yeah,
kind of reduce the need to involve more people. Plus adopting Flutter or like learning Flutter curve was not that much steep,
that's, by the
because
way, one of the questions that we have. How steep was the learning curve for you
yeah.
and for your team?
Yeah, so basically this is cross platform solves a very big problem for us, involving less people in the project management. Like one single person can develop the whole app instead of like involving one person from iOS, involving one person from Android, and like managing their time, and like many things are involved like while a product is being developed. So like a need is reduced to like half. When I
Okay, but
mentioned like Flutter will take like
you
50.
kind of talk about the very general conception, and I agree with you that the general concept of writing single code base. If you don't have any special needs and everything
Mhm.
works, and you don't need to fall back to native, integrate native components with Flutter components, and if you have if the libraries and the frameworks that Flutter provides, Flutter ecosystem provide. Okay, I totally agree with you, but still it's very interesting for me specific numbers, because you specified 400 hours for Android and iOS and 600
Mhm.
hours for Flutter. That's very specific numbers, right? And from these numbers, it looks like you claim that Flutter application, for example, let's say I need just Android application for whatever reason. That's I know that it's not a common request. Usually when clients come to you, they need both applications in most cases. But let's say that for some reason I need Android application.
Mhm.
uh, what you claim is that, as far as I can tell, and please elaborate on that, is that if I write this application in Flutter, it will take 50% more time. So it looks like if I just need Android application, writing it natively will spare me 50% of effort. Is that correct? Or you would like to kind of nuance it and elaborate a bit about this point?
So like I was just want to elaborate a bit. It's not like
Yeah.
Flutter take apps takes more time. In the hourly estimate that we mentioned, we do not take only the development time, but we also take a time to like bug fixes. Like if the client comes on a later stage, suppose like after 15 days or 20 days, like this is the bug which is coming, so like we cannot charge to him, right? So we also like estimate the time of bug fixes to it. And like
Hmm.
the thing which we're talking about, like Flutter takes more time than Android, then I would say that the time is comparably less if you build the same feature in Flutter and if you build the same feature as Android. I would argue that the time in Flutter is comparatively less, if not more. It's like less only because like there are many features are there in Flutter, like hot reload and all. So like suppose you are on a checkout page of a product, you are making a checkout page. For
Hmm.
every design change that you have to like increasing the font size or like changing the background color of your app, you have to like kind of restart your whole app. Some functionalities are there like restart activity and all, but they're not as much useful as. So
Yeah.
Flutter is having a feature of like hot reload, so that's why they took Dart. So Dart has a feature called, so it has a just in time compilation. So Dart has this feature, whatever the changes are there, it can like reflect or like immediately. So whenever like this color change is there and many small changes are there, they are reflected like immediately, unlike Android where we have to like run the whole app again. So like
Yeah.
this is
Yes.
the misconception, like Flutter takes more time, but yeah, for the people who are new to this ecosystem, they should take some extra buffer time if they get stuck anywhere or something like that.
Okay, I totally agree with you that I mean, there's no developer in the world, I think, who would argue that hot reload is not a great feature. Um, by the way, we have some kind of sound distortion. No, still going on.
Okay.
Try maybe to play a bit with your headphones. Okay, now it's good. Now it's good. Okay, so no Android, well, no developer in the world in general would argue that having hot reload is bad. And anyone who ever touched web development and then needs to go to Android, and they're like they're shocked. I met several developers who made that transition. They're just shocked. Like, what do you mean you cannot see in real time what you do? Like, you need to actually start your application to see the UI. I agree with you, but still, like, I mean, okay, I get it. Developing UI in Flutter is simpler conceptually, but still, for example, Android has many more years of ecosystem development. And if you need some kind of a very niche library, UI library to, I don't know what, I well, whatever it is, basically you have libraries almost for everything, right? And in Flutter, even though they've been working really hard, and I really appreciate what Flutter team does in the context of community building and building the ecosystem, I think they just run circles around Android team. Android team basically fucked that up totally, and now all this disrespect that they treated us developers with a huge disrespect over the years, now it comes back and bites them in the ass, because now they start putting libraries on GitHub. Now they on Twitter invite you to contribute, even though for years developers have been asking them, like, guys, put something on, we want to contribute, we want to help, be more transparent. You call it Android open source project, but at the bottom, like at the end of the day, you don't develop it as open source. You develop it internally, and you just drop code once in a year or something. So all that is true, but still, like, how can you claim that Flutter development is faster or even comparable to Android if you don't measure the actual time it takes to develop applications? And I mean, okay, let's kind of segregate that, because some people jump at me when I say that Kotlin, for example, that Kotlin adoption will not make you more productive. And people jump at me, no, but to actually execute this test, you'll need to write the same team writing Kotlin application, then Java application, and it's impossible to make this test. It's impossible to claim that, but I actually think it is possible, because if you have developed like 16 apps over the course of the past year and a half, and you developed a couple of apps before that, and you actually track the time it takes you to develop these apps, you can actually compare and say, okay, these apps, we cannot say exactly, but if it's 50% difference, you will see that. You cannot miss 50% difference. You cannot miss even 20% difference. So that's my question. How can you claim that Flutter is more productive or even comparable to native development? Like, do you have numbers? Do you track time spent? Do you see that, let's say, in the final bills that you send to clients, you see that eventually, like after the project is completed, the final not final estimate, final bill, final count of hours that the client pays for is really 50% or whatever it is really lower than before. So could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah. So like adopting Flutter as a platform, we like face many problems. Such as one of the common problem which we face everywhere was updating the data. Like if I'm on a home screen, and let's say my wallet balance is shown onto the top right of the screen, and I go to somewhere in the app and I update my wallet balance. So when I come back to the screen, my wallet balance should be updated, and the need to API call should be minimized. It's a data updation problem throughout the app. So like we face such problems which were like not a major, but it was like a major for to show the data. We cannot show like incorrect data to the user, and regarding wallet balance, it like this thing cannot be tolerated. So like we face some these challenges while developing these apps, and like talking about the developer experience while building apps. So like transforming my career from like when I was developing for Android and I started development for Flutter. So it was like when we were seeing that, we were like a little bit ensured that we are not doing like something like totally crazy. Like we could understand the syntax of the Dart programming language. It was like similar to Java, and also it also included a bit of JavaScript. So like we were kind of certain that we can pull it off. So like when we started developing for Flutter, the documentation of Flutter is kind of really good. Whatever you see, it's like really well documented because it's like a modern day programming language. And if like also talking about the development speed. So instead of like Android, we don't declare like once in XML, once in Java or Kotlin. We like develop only in on a single dart file. The whole
Hmm.
UI and logic is also implemented. So like coming back to your question, like how does I can say that it takes less time as
Hmm.
compared to native one. So time can also depend like on person to person. But if you're comparing like only my time, I would say that the same UI which I could build in Flutter in native, I can build that UI in in a not more or less, but in a comparatively less time in Flutter because Flutter
Okay,
teams take care
but
of many things.
yeah, I mean, okay, but after all, Android applications are not just, in general, mobile applications are not just about user interface, right? And I know that my experience in this context might be not representative because for some reason I always end up working on the most complex applications which don't have very complex UI. So my experience is that, I work usually on all this complex stuff like offline mode and security and stuff. And I haven't done my full share of UI development, and the apps that I did push to production, pretty much all of them looked awful, like enterprise grade stuff where it's more important to do the right spreadsheet or something, or medical stuff where the UI is not like very consumer oriented. But still, like even like if I think, for example, let's take your education edu platform project. Did it
Mhm.
have, let's say, live streaming capabilities? For example, was it something related to video lessons?
Yeah, so it has a capability. It had a capability to like play videos, but not live streaming at the time. It did not have live streaming. It only was capable of playing videos.
So just standard streaming
Yeah,
from the internet.
standard streaming. Yes.
Okay, which is like not the most complex stuff to do in either Android or iOS. How did it
Mhm.
work out in Flutter? Did you have difficulties, challenges? Did you have a framework or a library already to use?
So, like we all know that Flutter teams like does a lot of hard work in maintaining like all these basic plugins. So, like the in-app, like some of the basic plugins like in-app purchase for like Android and iOS both, the ability to play videos, the ability to like stream content, or the concept of streams, the concept of streams. It Flutter has all the native widgets for it, or the libraries are all developed by the Flutter team itself, like
Hmm.
all these animation, scale animation, and like many things Flutter provides support like out of the box for it. In like we do not have to jump here and there in Android, like I need object animator, I need a value animator, property animator. Flutter provides like a very basic things for it, and you can like do the things easily for it.
So for that education edutech project, you basically
Mm.
never had to go and write custom adaptations for Android and iOS. You could just use Dart and Flutter libraries, and you never had to fall back to native.
Yeah, in that project I didn't have to write the custom native code, but in one of our projects I had to write. So we had to use a third party service for it, for like customer request monitoring.
Okay.
And that software like didn't have the Flutter plugin for it. So we took some extra time because like iOS was a totally new concept to me. So in that plugin which I wrote, it was a fresh chat. You might have heard it. So they didn't have out of the box support for Flutter. So that plugin I wrote, I took the help of some iOS developers, plus the Android part I did myself by adding dependency and performing communication through method channel, basically, which is how we communicate from Flutter to the native part. And we implemented that feature in a native thing. It was not totally native. We like passed the callbacks to the Flutter from the native part.
Interesting. And do you know how long it took you to implement this kind of? I don't know if did you write a custom plugin for Flutter, or did you just kind of interface with the native code, native like Android and iOS?
It was a custom plugin we wrote.
Custom plugin. Okay, how long did it take you? Can you estimate approximately in days, hours?
So like for Android, it took me like 2 days, and for iOS, it took us like 3 days.
Okay, so less than a week, basically. Not something
Uh,
crazy.
in a week, we were able to pull it off.
Great. So, did you maybe have other instances where you had to kind of fall back to more native traditional ways, or that was like the only one over the course of 8 different projects?
No, that was not the only one, because like many, as the Flutter is gaining popularity, many companies are providing their support for their tools, such as like most of the payment providers, they have like provided their own custom plugins for Flutter. And like they other than this one CRM tool, we were like also like recently a project came to us for a POC one. In that we have to start like a video call on Flutter.
Hmm.
So we were like, we I didn't know like how to perform that all using the Flutter native plugins and libraries. So we were kind of developing POC on it. So but as we were like doing some more POC, that project like that person kind of like stepped back at that time. He was like keen to do his business, but for some other reasons that person stepped back. So like I'll continue my research on that, like on how to make a video call in Flutter, but like there were some more instances, but more or less they were solved by adding an external plugin for that.
Hmm. So, if I like, if you need to throw a percentage number on the amount of features that required you to go and implement non-standard ways, like not outside of Flutter default configuration, would that be 5%, 3%, 2%, or
Very
more?
very less, around 2 or 3%.
Two,
Very
two,
less.
okay, great. That's a very
Yeah.
good number. So basically, absolute majority of the features that you had to develop over the course of like 8 different projects, Flutter accommodates them out of the box. And I guess that Flutter is a very fast evolving ecosystem. So what you
Yes.
had to do manually a year ago, maybe today there's already a plugin for that.
Yeah, so community is going, people know that how the system of these libraries and all go. So they know that if they develop a suitable plugin, they can like show off that plugin on their resume and all. So people know like how these things work. So the community is also kind of keen to like develop all these plugins.
Great. And we have here one comment. I will share it now.
Hmm.
Let's see, where is that? Oh, yep. Cybershark says, what I'm guessing is that Flutter has to be tested on 2 environments, so the 600-hour count will be including that. So it was to be Android only. In Flutter, it will take less time. And I think that this comment is absolutely amazing. It is correct because in many instances, like fans and advocates of cross-platform solutions, they come to business people and they say, you can adapt Ionic, Xamarin, React, whatever it is, Flutter, and we will reduce your development time and of course money spent by 50%. And it's always a bullshit out of the, like, I mean, if you say 50%, that's a bullshit. That's like and that's what I say to many people who kind of talk to me about this stuff. Whenever you say 50, whenever you hear 50%, you know that you should not ever listen to that person, because yes, there is always testing, and testing takes time. And I guess that on different platforms, well, that's my question basically. How long does testing take? And are you experiencing different types of bugs and different types of problems on Android and iOS?
So like when I started with Flutter, we were very skeptical like how will it run on two platforms. So like in iOS, if you see in, just a second, is there any background noise coming from my side?
Yes, there is a bit, but it's okay.
Or just a second, like let me just shut my door, it will also vanish. Just a
No
second.
problem. Okay, guys, meanwhile, I will entertain you with some Android jokes. No, I will show you some comments. Let's go over comments.
Okay.
Uh, oh, you're back? I
Yes.
wanted I wanted to do some stand-up comedy. Okay, great. So the question was, what about testing, and do you see different types of bugs and problems on different platforms?
Yeah, so like whenever we feature, we like face a lot of this problem. So like whenever we develop any screen, we like kind of to design like how to do that in Android and how does that look like in iOS. So like any design, if you will compare that in a 5-inch screen, and like any design, if you will compare that the same design in the iPhone 11 Pro Max, so like
Hmm.
those do not look good exact at all. So like we had a very hard time doing this, like how to solve this problem, because UI had to good look in all these screen sizes. So like initially we started like we'll do like if the size of text size is let's say 20 in Android. In the bigger screen sizes it had to be like around 23, and Flutter does not scale all these things automatically like in Android does.
Ouch.
Flutter, hmm,
Now,
there
the nasty details come out.
yeah.
What do you mean by not scales automatically? Isn't there like let's say constraint layout or relative layout analogy in Flutter?
So like layouts and all they can expand, but the small things like the text size. If let's say I declare a text size as 20, it will appear a good in like let's say 5-inch screen. But if you look the same in like iPhone 11 Pro Max, that will look very small.
Okay, and for example, on Android, you have these the resources, the directories that you can adjust according to the screen size. And I'm not really, I don't have much experience in iOS, but I guess they also have some kind of responsive
Yeah,
resources.
they have like
Does
1x,
Flutter
2x, and
support
3x.
something like that?
So IS also has like 1x, 2x, and 3x bucket, but
Hmm.
it only for the resources. Like what to do of these text sizes. Once a text size is declared of like of size, let's say 20, it will be of 20 only. So initially we solved this problem like we used to write that if platform is iOS, let's say if the platform is iOS, then the text size would be like 23, else it would be like 20. And when the app has had gone for testing, we test in like 3 to 4 phones. Like one we tested in Android small screen
Hmm.
size of let's say 5-inch, and another testing is done like around 6 inches phone. In iOS it's done in like one is in iPhone 10, one is in iPhone 6. So like we tested all the screen sizes and we like faced a lot of difficulties in managing these, scaling these. Like the UI should not be affected in all the cases. So approach we finally took was to divide sometimes, mm, in the bigger screen sizes we develop another approach, like we calculate the screen size at the starting of the app.
Hmm.
So like let's say if the text screen size is bigger than let's say like 700 pixel, we adopted a different size of the resources for that. Else if it is less than 700 pixel, like let it go, it will look good.
Yeah, and doesn't Flutter has, I mean, you say that in Android you can only replace layouts, but if I'm not mistaken, and maybe I am, you can also replace dimensions files. You can have like directories according to your, how do you call them? Screen, it's not
screen,
resolution.
screen
Uh,
density and all.
yeah, screen density, but also screen sizes, right? It's both of them you can have, and then you can just place different dimension files into this stuff and override them. And for example, if I want to have a text of 20 sp on let's say my phone and something else on a tablet, I can do, at least that's what I remember. Maybe I'm wrong here, maybe I planted myself some fake memory. But isn't there like a standard ready to use approach to this kind of bucketing of your user interface in Flutter?
we, we can use this approach only in like the icons, the images and all, but talking of the these static like text sizes and all, there is like no standard approach to it. Another problem we faced was the experience of translation in Flutter is not that much great. So we
Mm.
like write a JSON file, and like based on the users locally, we like fetch the data from the corresponding JSON file. So that experience of translation is also like that not that much great in Flutter. It's like very error prone, and but whenever we have to do some changes, we have to do some like carefully and all.
Okay, and but I guess Flutter should have some kind of localization facility that you can use. I mean, you can do that yourself, and I actually did that quite several times yourself. For example, if you need a functionality when you can change the language, irrespective of the language of the chosen locale in the on the phone, then you are
Mhm.
pretty much doing it yourself now. Uh, so it is one way to do that, but for simple cases, doesn't Flutter have some kind of localization support?
I don't know. I haven't seen any kind of like support from the Flutter side. Whatever we do, we implement it on like on our use case and our side. Flutter does not provide like out of the box support for it.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so localization, localization. This doesn't sound great, honestly. I mean, for complex cases, when you really want to implement some kind of like user control over the language, I guess I mean, that's the only option that you can use because, for example, in Android, you don't have anything like that. Probably in iOS, you don't have anything like that either. But in many cases, clients want just one or two languages, and they don't really want their users to switch languages at runtime. They're totally fine with having the system default.
But many
Uh,
many cases this thing does not work out because like looking into India itself, we have like many languages in our country, and based on the based on which area they want to target, they usually do want the support of different languages.
yeah, yeah. Okay, great. So you are using Flutter exclusively now as a company, or you still sometimes write native applications?
So like again the same thing which I said in the starting, we solve problems. So whenever a project comes to us, we like scan it thoroughly and extensively, and then we see like is this thing suitable for Flutter. So like we take the like the heaviest use case of that in which we think we might face a problem, and we develop like a POC in that, and we
Mm-hmm.
see like how smooth that function run and how the other things work based on that. So like most of the cases it does work out because many of the time we are only like fetching data from our backend and like
Yeah.
showing it onto the UI with some like custom functions of the phone. But let's say if a project comes to which involves the use of sensors like gyrometer or any other sensors, but then I'm not sure will I choose Flutter for it.
But have you had actually applications, clients that came to you and you decided to go more native? Have you developed, you personally, have you worked on a native application for the past year and a half?
So like we have worked on native application. Yes. So like within like 1.5 months, we have started our Android project. So like it was an app which already have like 10 million downloads,
Okay.
and that was like all in one app. It had a browser in itself, like, and you do after installing that app, you don't need to install any other app. So basically, it will just fetch whatever you want to use that you can use that app, and you do not require any other feature in that app. So for that we choose Flutter, oh sorry, native, and we developed that app in native, and like it was a pretty, and for like browse for the browser module also, one of the advantage of doing in native that we use for the browser support we used Firefox SDK for that.
Mm. Firefox has SDK. It's basically replacing WebView.
No, Firefox provides support. Firefox provide a browser support so that we can integrate that browser in our Android application.
Yeah, and it replaces WebView, so you can show basically web pages inside your application instead of dealing
No,
with
it was
WebView.
it was not a web view. It was like a full-fledged browser, Chromium
Full
based
browser
browser.
with all the controls and everything.
Yeah, Chromium was they were using.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know about that. Okay, so there are still cases, let's call them complex cases, where you
Mhm.
still need to develop Android applications natively because some part of functionality. And I actually just very recently, like 2 or 3 months ago, I had a client who asked me, like, which kind of technology should I choose for this project, and they had relatively simple. relatively simple project. As you said, bring data from backend, show it in the UI, get users input, send back to backend. Nothing complex, but there was
Mhm.
one relatively complex stuff, which is showing information on the map overlay. And I kind of thought that maybe this would be a good fit for Flutter. So I just, as you said, you look at the application, you analyze where it can bite you in the ass. So where's
Mhm.
the problematic features, and you kind of just want to explore ahead of time, not to run into these problems when you
Mhm.
develop. So I kind of just went off to GitHub, searched on Flutter GitHub for everything, every bug related to maps, and very quickly I came around this issue which says that on iOS when they draw markers on map, they do all of that sequentially on the UI thread. So basically, if you have many markers, you can have your app stuck for many seconds. And that was the case in this application. So I right away told them, guys, Flutter is not for you. Okay, maybe React Native is a better option right now because at least they don't have this kind of functionality, and their maps library much more mature than in Flutter. So that's okay. That's reasonable. You have some things that you will still develop in Android, but if it's a relatively simple application, Flutter is the way to go. Uh, all right. Nimish, is there anything? I think. Well, sorry. One question that I did want to ask you. It's from Hardik, and Hardik asks, "How about automated testing? Is it possible to do unit testing in Flutter?" So, do
Yeah,
you
so
have
it
experience with automated testing? Do you do automated testing?
yeah, so when we started with Flutter, we did not do like everything should be automated, everything should be tested and all. We like started from the end. So first we wrote like the API test cases,
Mm-hmm.
and after the API test cases, we started seeing the business logic, like how does the output of this API call affects our UI. So we like only updated our business logic components, and as we change the state of that state of the components, and based on that the UI used to automatically update as
Mm-hmm.
we change the state of that application. So you might have heard like state management was a very hot topic in Flutter. It's now also. So as we change the state of the application, the UI also changed upon that. So in terms of unit testing, we first wrote API test cases, and after then we wrote the business logic test cases. But the in terms of fully automating UI testing, we are not doing that as of now. But since I saw an interview with the guys at New Bank, they have said that they do not have any manual testers, and they are like 100% into automated testing. So that was
Yeah.
kind of impressive for me. I know how the test works. We do like any small test cases, but we have not like superimpose like this thing. We should have like 80% coverage of all our code in the apps. We do not have like impose this thing as of now, but yeah, in the recent time, if people have achieved it, then like we should also be do it.
Yeah, that's definitely something very interesting, that interesting nuance that I discovered when I talked to Luis
Yeah.
and Renato, that they do only automated testing. They don't have any QA, and they adopted Flutter. So if you guys haven't seen that interview yet, you can watch that. So yeah, there is a way to do automated testing in Flutter.
There is a
Um,
loop. We don't like impose it like we have to cover your all the code 80% code by unit testing. But yeah, we do some amount of testing whenever I feel there's some components is like updated from like many places in the app.
Yeah, and actually, like once again, it's a little bit trickier when you do software development as an agency than if you do product development, because um, unit testing. Well, if you are good at unit testing does not increase your effort. But very
Yeah.
few developers are that good at unit testing. Most developers struggle with it very enormously. And most companies, when they look at unit testing, they decide that they need to allocate some time to it. So it's kind of an activity that you need.
It doesn't take time. Like if you have your like base architecture in place, and if you are doing things like as an experienced developer, it doesn't take time. Around 15 to 20 minutes after you have completed a whole feature, or like based on that, it doesn't take much time.
Yeah, in my experience, it saves time, but again, you need to invest time to get to this point. That's what I'm saying. It's a complex technique that you don't just read a book or you don't just watch a course and you are good to go. That's something that takes weeks, if not months, to master. But UI testing is actually something that you need to invest additional time into. It's not
Because
something you do on the way.
changes occur on the fly, and maintaining UI testing is like not a easy job at all. I'm not saying it's difficult, but it's not easy. So like changing, sometimes the customer comes like, hey, I want to change this color, or I want to change this segment. So like maintaining UI test is not easy.
Yeah, and as a software, what I'm saying is that as a product company, if you like very good product company and you actually value your time and money, then you do UI testing, you do unit testing, and this you kind of calibrate it over time because you work on this project for half a year, 2 years, 5 years. But as a software development company, you get projects, you work on them maybe for 2, 3 months, 4 months, right? And one of your goals is to spare your clients money because they pay per work. So you don't want
Hmm.
to do work which is maybe not will be needed. And unfortunately, as someone who works mostly with startups, I know that most projects they are dead in 1 2 year. So if you spend a lot of time building this UI testing infrastructure, if you spend a lot of time thinking about architecture, and then the project is dead in 1 year, then basically your client paid for nothing. So it's a very, very difficult balance to strike as a software development agency. And I mean, I'm a huge proponent of unit testing. Like I swear by this practice, but still, when I work for my clients, no one of them gets like 80% coverage. There's just not no way. Maybe if it's a very complex application, I will test some modules, I will test some specific classes, but I don't even try to test everything because it's a waste of time. Well, it's a waste of my time, and then it's a increased cost for my clients. And I know ahead of time that most of these projects will either be dead or there will be just not that many changes. Because when you work with product company, then then usually you have much more changes and then tests just save your ass. But if you are a solo developer, if you have two developers working on the application, it's much more difficult trade-off to make. Okay, let's just see if we have some interesting questions here. um, Writing an effective and maintainable unit testing needs quite a bit of effort. uh, Yes, but that's if you look at the very short term, because it also spares you effort on the backend. For example, if you change something and you don't need to run manual tests, then it saves you time. And we discussed, by the way, I made an interview about Flutter with Bernardo Ferrari, so you can also find it on my channel. And we discussed how unit testing, and he drove unit testing to some crazy 99 or even 100% coverage. But in his case, driving that it to that high was actually very useful. And he said that he wouldn't be able to just test the application manually. It was an application, it was a plugin. He wouldn't be able to just test his plugin manually without unit testing. Okay, Nimish, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I think you gave us much material to think about. Me, definitely, I'm kind of sitting on the fence now, trying to understand what do I learn next, what do I recommend to my students, to Take Your Chance members, and Flutter is definitely an option on the table. One thing I wanted to ask you, I know that in India, Flutter is going very strong, really strong. And
Yeah,
in Israel,
because
where I live, Flutter is pretty much non-existent yet. I mean, if I look
React
at my
Native,
link, sorry?
React Native is React Native more popular there?
Yes, yes. If you look at LinkedIn job offers, and I did that like a week ago, you are still seeing quite a bit of React Native. So all software agencies, they're still using React Native. They haven't switched to Flutter yet. But I'm just curious because we started our discussion, we got to know each other because of this tweet of mine, right?
Mhm.
So basically, say, so dear Android developers, who isn't scared of Flutter yet? How's your migration to Kotlin going, by the way? And in your experience, in India and Android developers in India, or maybe India is too big for you to speak about, but maybe in your
Mm.
area where you live, do you feel that Android developers are kind of scared, kind of look at Flutter and think that maybe they should learn this framework just not to be, let's call it, obsolete in the coming future? Or like you're still like Flutter is mostly for agencies and stuff, and developers aren't looking into Flutter just out of this
So I'll
fear?
say that people are not scared to try out Flutter, but like many people, they are like skeptical to like try into hybrid apps. So like before like 1 or 2 months, I was talking to a person. He was about to start a startup, and that was
Hmm.
nothing like more complex. The only native feature it involved was taking the location of the user, and like that too also once. So I advised him about like Flutter, and I said that I have already worked with like these location things and all. They do not cause a problem at all, and like it's relatively easy. But he did not go ahead his Flutter because he was not convinced. Like whenever I will present my apps to investors and all, they will like look down on me, like
Hmm.
whether why have you developed a hybrid application. So like he had also gone to like native at the time. So like this is a kind of break thing it's happening with developers and founders. But developers like us, they are not scared, but they are kind of skeptical. Like we will stuck with native only, we'll go, Android is launching Compose, we'll go with Compose only. I will not try out Flutter until it's like fully fledged full framework. But yeah, I think everyone should like give it once a try, because again it's about like solving problems. If we can solve a problem by less effort and like more maintainable and all, I think we should give it a try.
That's an interesting thought. I don't think I would agree with that because, I mean, well, I hate, I
Yeah,
hate to, I hate to pull the age card, but like when I was in my 20s, and you would
yeah.
bring me some new technology to try,
Mm,
I would just like spend my nights playing with new technologies. But at
yeah.
this point in my life, I'm just like, I want to make very educated decisions, and really, I'm not into business of learning new technologies just for the sake of learning new technologies. I'm past that. I have objectives. I have clients. I have students. I will do whatever it needs to be done to support them, both clients, students. But I'm not
Mm,
in the business of learning new technologies just for the sake of it. I mean, sometimes I do, like Docker. I didn't need it, but it
mm,
was just cool. But I understand that it's a limitation, and I actually try to fight that because I have limited amount of time and I need to choose very carefully how I spend. That's how I look at it. And
mm.
unfortunately, no one told me that when I was 20. So
So
I
yeah,
just
like
wanted to
after
give
you
you a little bit pushback on that.
so like after you gain like some amount of experience, we like cannot advise anyone to like, hey, jump onto this, hey, jump onto Compose, hey, like jump onto Kotlin, or like anything. We have to like look at the problem, like how will this tool solve a problem, and
Yeah.
based on our analysis we try to give like, hey, like this will be a good tool to solve this problem. For example, if someone comes like, I want to build like a static page of like for my apartments. So like we cannot like advise him to build, hey, just go and build a React app for that. We know that just a static page site using tools like card and all, it will suffice for him.
Hmm.
So like my perspective is this, that you should have a knowledge of like some right tools and all, so that when the problems comes, you can pull the right tool to solve the problem, instead of like solving using only a one tool to solve every problem.
Yeah, but again, and just kind of like injecting my own opinion into you. I'm not arguing, by the way. Your
uh,
opinion is as valid as mine, or maybe even more valid because you actually have hands-on experience. But I just think that you can actually evaluate tools and understand tools without investing tens or hundreds of hours into learning them. So I
yeah,
think
right.
I think like I read about Flutter, I understand Flutter, at least at the conceptual level, and based on my current understanding, like when this project came in and it was relatively simple, even though I
Mm,
haven't developed Flutter in my life, I just
mm,
immediately thought, okay, this might be a good fit for Flutter. It didn't work out, that way eventually, but never mind. I knew about Flutter. So yeah, I agree with you that we need to know about the landscape of the technology. We need to know about the tools that are out there. We need to understand the respective benefits and drawbacks. And
Mm.
by the way, for that's why I make these conversations, and that's why I so appreciate you taking time to share your experience with us, because there is no better way to learn about these things than to just listen to experienced developers talk about them. And in this case, like, I think you shared a lot of very good material and food for thought. And I think we can kind of summarize.
So like one
Uh,
question I had for you also, like you
yes,
said like you said like you work with startup and you like help them out. Plus you also maintain a blog where I've heard that it takes about 2 full working days for you to publish a blog, to research and all.
yeah.
And like you are also like focused on building your own community. So like how does your day look like? How do you manage your time? Like, hey, this time I'll I'll work with this team, this time
Wow.
I'll work with this team.
Okay, I really hope that you haven't made much plans for today,
No, no,
because
no, no.
you're just stepping into a topic that will take us another hour. Okay, I
Yeah.
will answer it very shortly because it's really a very long discussion. But
Mm-hmm.
I wasted a lot of my time. I mean, when I look back, I think I wasted my 20s, just wasted them, partying, drinking, going around, not doing anything productive with my life. And today I'm really concerned, really focused on productiveness, on, making myself very disciplined, doing the work even if I don't like it. So for the past couple of months, I actually took this routine, and I managed to build a routine where I wake up at 6 a.m. I'm doing my yoga. Then I
Yeah.
go either for jogging, or for I do Muay Thai, or boxing, Thai boxing. So I do either that or that. And then if I jog, then basically at 9 after after breakfast and shower, I start working. And if I go to Muay Thai, then it takes me a lot more time to recover. So I start working at noon. And I still don't think that I'm very productive, but I try to get there. And by the way, it takes. I mean, you mentioned several things that I do, and
Mm.
it's a very big question on my mind currently. Is like, do I spread myself too thin? Like, I have a blog, and by the way, I don't write nearly enough. I would like to write every week, but as you said, it doesn't take me 2 days each post. Some posts take me just 3 hours to write if they're relatively simple. But if it's
Mm.
something that requires research, or it's just something long, yeah,
Mm.
2 days. Like when my posts that where I criticized Kotlin and where I came up with my conspiracy theory back then, this took
Yeah.
like maybe a week. Each of them took a week of research. So there's definitely a lot of work there. Courses are the hardest thing and the most time consuming thing that I do right now, because every course takes approximately 1 month or 2 months of full-time effort. So that's a
Yeah.
tough thing. So yeah, it's a
I,
very
I,
difficult,
I heard you
very
tell
difficult
like,
question. But I have a advantage of many people of my age. I'm not married and I don't have children.
yeah, like
So
that's
I, I'm not
that's
saying
very
I'm not saying that I'm
relatable.
recommending that. I'm not saying
Mm.
that. Okay, I don't recommend that, but it
Mm.
is an advantage when you don't have children and you're not married. You can pour your time into all kinds of stuff.
So like how do you work with startup? You like consult them like how to build this technology, or you do code reviews for them, or you like decide that hey, for this problem you should do like this tech stack you should choose. Like how do you
All of that. I mean, the
uh,
I used to my last application that I wrote, kind of application from scratch, was about 2 years ago, I think. Yeah,
mm,
about 2 years ago. And after that, I mostly, well, sometimes I still do, like, jump in, write some complex piece of logic,
mm,
something that requires experience, something like not a screen, or not design a new screen. But mostly I do, like, refactoring. That's something I really like. Like, if you have a bad code base, I jump in, understand what's going on, try to improve the things a bit. Consulting on like recommending technologies, like uh, arguing, convincing people that view model is not something that they should use. That's something that I do. um,
yeah,
what
I heard
else?
your conspiracy theories and all.
Yeah. I mean, I convinced quite a bit of people in person not to use view model. I don't know, probably a lot more people on the web from my blog. Um, yeah, code reviews, less code reviews, but I actually consider doing that, like kind of trying to publicize that I do that, but I don't know how to go about it. I don't know how to market this service. I will do code review for you, but as part of other things that I do, for example, team trainings or refactorings, code review is kind of included because I need to understand what's the problems that this specific code base suffers from. And it might sound like I'm doing a lot of work, but like in 2020, in 2020, I haven't done much client work at all because I spend a lot of time recording new course, building my new community. So yeah, it's definitely a trade-off, and I really think that I maybe in 2021 I will need to see how I
I
kind
mean,
of
definitely,
concentrate.
I do feel that you are on a different and a right track. You are not like everyone like, hey, I'm a Google fanboy or I'm a Kotlin fanboy. You are just trying to put on your own views on it, which is I kind of like it. So like there are only few guys on Twitter which like do that. One is you, one is the guy like Zach Swears who works at Slack,
Oh,
and like
let's not go personal. I know,
uh,
I know, I know where you want to go, but let's not do that.
yeah. But I really like your views about the platform
I
or
agree with
how.
you, by the way, but I
Yeah,
don't. I just don't want to turn it into personal. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And by the way, this is kind of like I used to be a very big Google fanboy. That's why I joined Android because I actually had a much better, like pay wise, money wise. I used to hold much better position and had much better perspective. But then I tried Android and thought, wow, everything is open source. People collaborate and stuff. And by the way, I should give Google, uh, how so, give Devil its due. They did build amazing community around Android, and that's what I especially like about it. And that's I think like Flutter maybe even took that. Flutter guys maybe even took that one step further because they learned from the mistakes that Android team did. Okay, Nimish, I really appreciate the time that you took. Maybe before we say goodbye, um, how people who watch this stream can find you, where they can follow you. Uh, how was that?
like if people want to get in touch with me, the best place is Twitter. So my Twitter
Sorry,
handle,
Twitter.
yeah. So best place is Twitter. So my Twitter handle will be like linked down below.
Right now, that's your Twitter
Yeah.
handle. So go follow Nimish, and maybe you told us so much about your company. Maybe just a word about your company, what you do, and how can you help.
So guys, check out Grappus. You can check out Grappus at like grappus.com, and we build like amazing stuff. We have we build like amazing UI and products. We have already worked with like many brands, and like we can develop a right tool for you to solve a problem. Whatever you are trying to build, we can help you build that.
Yeah, your website definitely looks like something that UI oriented people do. Simply
Yeah.
amazingly beautiful and very, very responsive. Okay, great. Nimish, once again, I really appreciate the time that you took. I think for me, it was very interesting discussion. I always like learning from the experience of others. I'm lazy. I don't want to do the work myself. And I think that the information you shared is absolutely amazing and very interesting. It will help me and I'm sure many other people to better understand what's going on and maybe they make their own decision about the next technology that they're going to choose. And thank you all everybody who joined this live stream or will watch that after we finish this recording.
So,
Thank you
thank you,
and
everyone.
goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.